Jacob and Co, founded in 1986, started out as a jewelry company, a very high-end jewelry company. Soon, though, they branched out into watches, and I'm oh so glad they did. Jacob and Co. This is one hefty catalog. It's soft cover, quite thick, regular shape for a catalog. It has a quite nice soft cover. It's a soft cover with their signature a little watch on here. That's not very little. They have a sort of, I don't know if you can really tell on the camera, but it's sort of a hidden logo here where, depending on the light, you can see it better or not, and it's sort of a bit glossy. The catalog creaks. I hope you could hear that. Yes, it does, and I believe the reason for that is, well, it creaks after you leave it for a while and you pick it up again. It will creak. Now it won't. The reason for that is, I believe that these watches, in the catalog, when you have a photo of the watch, it has a sort of glossy sheen on it, and that's why you get the creaks. Anyway, let's get into it. Jacob and Co, of course, make, well, here is the opera, there they make the Astronomia. Yes, Jacob and Co makes Astronomia. It's spectacular. We'll get to that. First up, I must mention that in this catalog, Jacob and Co put their best stuff first and then sort of spiral downhill from there, with only a couple spikes into very good territory. First, we have the opera, which is just spectacularly done. All of these first few watches are spectacularly done. Perhaps not for the finishing or the traditional watchmaking in them, but for the sheer beauty of the mechanism. They're great. Great. They're spectacular. With the gyro tourbillon, or however they want to call it, three-axis tourbillon or something like that, with the exposed gongs and the wheels and everything. These operas are quite nice. You have a couple different ones with a couple different songs and a couple different themes, and I love them. I love all musical watches. But to be honest, that's not what Jacob and Co is really about. If I was to choose a Jacob and Co, I would not choose this musical watch. I'd most certainly choose one of these Astronomias, because they're just the signature of Jacob and Co, and they're the reason Jacob and Co is where it is known as a watchmaker for these spectacular watches, which are spectacular for this reason. They mate both complex mechanisms of watches and the jewelry side, the original jewelry side of Jacob and Co. And that makes them really shine. Why? Because they're big, yes. They're modern, sure. They have a complex mechanism, of course. But they're clean. You don't really see the mechanism here. You see the mechanism, but you don't notice the complexity. You don't notice the struggle of the mechanical parts. You just notice those beautiful round balls orbiting the watch, seemingly hung in space. And with that very clear and bulbous case slash crystal, which really in this case the crystal can be called a case. We'll get to, well, all that. Yeah. What else to talk about? They have a numerous amount of these different astronomias. In my opinion, every single one of these is a work of beauty. Perhaps not exactly what you would consider art in the traditional sense, but if you think about it, I would say it is art. It is a different kind of art, a more modern kind of art, but it's not modern art, if you know what I'm talking about. One of my favorites, which I got to see in person, is an octopus one. I mean, that octopus is just spectacular. It wraps around everything. It's beautifully made. It's really the jewelry side of Jacob and Co. coming through. With all of these, with their cut for the different gemstone balls. That cut really is nice. And the micro earth. We have a couple more of these with some now here with dial variants. I don't need to talk that much about what is an Astronomia, you probably know, and if you don't, it's quite easy to see or to find a video about it. I'm here to say that the Astronomia is the signature of Jacob and Co, and there's a reason for it. There's a reason for that sheer jaw-dropping thing about it. And what's interesting is that really nothing else quite matches it in the Jacob and Co catalog. The Astronomia is just so perfect at what it is that some of these other watches, even something like the Opera, which is basically half of an Astronomia, it is basically an Astronomia just without those crystal balls. Even that is just falls short of that Astronomia ideal, which is quite a shame because some of these other watches here, of course now we just see the Astronomias, but later we'll see some other watches that are quite nice, but not as nice as the Astronomia. And Jacob & Co have a huge number of Astronomias, like so many different variants, everything like this. I mean, of course, everything is limited edition, 18 pieces, but really, I'm not sure that there's really a big waiting list, as these watches are quite expensive. But yeah, Astronomia. If you're getting a Jacob & Co, you probably want an Astronomia. And I can attest to it by seeing some of these different watches in person. There's one particular that we'll get to later that is just jaw-dropping. In person especially, maybe perhaps not in this catalog, but in person it's just incredible. But still, you go to the Astronomia. Continuing on, we have Millionaire with some diamond watches and stuff like that. This is actually quite cool what they did. Here we'll get to the non-tourbillon version. I believe there's a non-tourbillon version. Yeah, here of this thing, Brilliant or something like that, where the dial and the bezel is in diamonds. And to be honest, because Jacob & Co is technically a jeweler, and really is a jewelry company. That's what they were founded on. That's what they do mainly. Well, I don't know now mainly, but and that's their shtick. And it kind of fits them more having all these diamonds. I would perhaps not get the Brilliant, but some of these in between them, the Millionaire, or these Millionaire, that's not that bad with the yellow, what is it, citrine diamonds, I don't know. Yeah, yellow diamonds, of course, citrine. What are we paying, $100 for that? We continue on having a bunch of multicolored things and a few more things. This is quite an interesting watch, but I believe it's quartz powered. Yeah, quartz. A couple more of these, really not that interesting. Again, why would you want something like this when you can have an Astronomia? Unless you can afford the Astronomia, but then I'd tell you buy it from a different company. Because honestly, yes, you could get this Jacob and Co. And if you really want Jacob and Co, you could get a Jacob and Co for less price than an Astronomia. But if you're really into watches in general and want something similar to an Astronomia in its kind of, I don't know, in its style, I don't know what I'd get, but I'd probably not get one of the other Jacob and Co watches, except for one which we'll get to later, actually quite soon. Yeah, this one is quite nice with its movement, and of course finishing isn't bad. It's not as good as like some of these great companies like Langud Heini, but it's good. We have a pocket watch pendant and some other things. Come on, let's get to it. Yeah, twin turbo tourbillon. This is what everyone wants. If you don't, I mean, if they didn't have the Astronomia, this is what would be their rise to fame. And yes, they would rise in fame because this is quite good. Twin turbo tourbillon. These are very fast tourbillons, and I mean, they're mesmerizing. A regular tourbillon is mesmerizing, but with the Astronomia, while you do get that whole spinning thing, everything spins around and everything's like that, the more magical aspect of the Astronomia isn't the tourbillon. It's more of the suspension of the different parts in the case. While with here, the mechanism really shines through. This is also a minute repeater, of course, and you can see some of the parts in the minute repeater train in this top part of the watch. Let's see, I'm not really going to point out anything. Yeah, it's not really easy to point out anything, but you can see that, and you can probably see it move if the minute repeater goes, and you got a nice little crank for the winding system. But yeah, this is one of these spectacular Jacob and Co watches that isn't an Astronomia. This is another one that's quite nice. Again, quite mechanically novel and interesting with the world time function and all of that. And we have a couple more of these different ones, some chronographs, really this interesting lug shape and all of this with some nice colors and all. But really, this is Jacob and Co. This is Jacob and Co, but it's a different side of Jacob and Co. They have the Astronomia side, and then they have this side. And honestly, of this side, the best is definitely that twin turbo tourbillon minute repeater. But then that Astronomia is just an Astronomia, and here we have another interesting, and all these are interesting, don't get me wrong, I would love to have any of them, but really, for the prices you're paying, I would rather have different watches, especially the Ghost. I mean, this is a digital watch. I can see its place, but for the price and for everything, it might fit in the Jacob and Co catalog. This is interesting. What is it? Hublot. But yeah, that's the thing with Jacob and Co. A lot of these watches, for me at least, they don't seem to fit anywhere. I said two sides of Jacob and Co, but really a lot of these things just are on their own. This is like a Hublot watch. This is, I don't know, what is it? I have no idea. The Ghost, I have no clue what that would be. Some of these jeweled watches, I mean, this would technically be in the same side as that Astronomia, but can you really see the connection? Which is the reason for me that Jacob and Co is a great company, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they're missing anything, but perhaps they're trying a bit too hard, if you know what I mean, with all these different things. I won't say stick to just the Astronomia, but perhaps make something in the style of Astronomia that's just a bit cheaper instead of having to get a ghost. Anyway, that's my thought on Jacob and Co, and that's the catalog in its entirety. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching the video to the end. If you liked it, please subscribe and like the video. Perhaps consider supporting me on Patreon. Any support would be greatly appreciated. I will be coming out with catalog collectors once a week for the foreseeable future. Of course, until I run out of catalogs. We'll see what happens then. See you in the next one.